Emmerdale's Cain Dingle realizes he's made a big mistake tonight, as the police warn him off from any further meddling in Moira's case. Has he made everything worse by putting pressure on Bear Wolf? Cain knows that Bear's recollections could hold the key to proving Moira's innocence in the modern slavery scandal, and he hasn't been shy when it comes to pointing this out. Sadly, encouraging Bear to speak up was clearly a step too far in the police's eyes. Last night, Bear tried to clear Moira's name by insisting that she wasn't involved in the illegal activities at Celia's farm. Just when it seemed like the police might listen, Bear slipped up by revealing that Cain had directly asked him to make this clear. Cain's intervention came across as intimidation of a crucial witness. And with Bear so vulnerable at the moment, the optics didn't look good. I end tonight's episode. Chen tries to track down Cain at the garage. Cain isn't around, so Matty Barton asks for an update on whether Bear's confession in Ray Walters' murder case will change things for Moira. His confession has nothing to do with your mum's charges, Chen replies. I get you're frustrated, but you don't want to end up like Cain Dingle. His frustrations spilled over with Mr. Howelson the other day, and it could be seen as intimidation. Although it's unusual to hear it on screen, Edward Howelson is Bear's real name. Chen adds, that's what I needed a word about. So you might want to tell him this. If he crosses that line again, it won't be a quiet word. It'll be a formal warning. Later, Cain visits Moira in prison. He glumly breaks the bad news that Bear's confession hasn't helped her at all. In fact, things are worse after the police's stern reaction to Cain's meddling. What does the future hold for Moira now? Meanwhile, tonight's episode also sees Mandy Dingle return to the village after her time away in Ireland. In real life, Lisa Riley, who plays Mandy, took time away from filming to compete on ITV's I'm a Celebrity. Get me out of here. Late last year, Mandy arrives back to chaos, with the police piling pressure on Paddy Dingle and Dylan Penders amid the fallout from Bear's confession. Is there any way she can help to fix the situation? Chen stood just inside the garage office, her expression cool and unreadable. Opposite her, Matty Barton wiped oil from his hands with a rag, trying not to look as uneasy as he felt. So Bear's statement doesn't change anything? Matty pressed. Chen shook her head. His confession relates to Ray Walters' murder investigation. It has nothing to do with your mum's charges. Matty's jaw tightened. But he said she wasn't involved. He told you that. And then, Chen replied evenly, he revealed that Cain Dingle had specifically asked him to make that clear. Matty swallowed. Chen's voice hardened just a fraction. Your stepdad's frustrations spilled over with Mr. Howelson the other day. The use of Bear's real name, Edward Howelson, sounded strangely formal, almost clinical. It could be seen as intimidation, Chen added. Matty stiffened. Cain wouldn't. I'm not here to debate his intentions, Chen cut in. I'm here to warn him. If he crosses that line again, it won't be a quiet word. It'll be a formal warning. The threat lingered long after she left. The weight of guilt. Cain stood alone behind Butler's farm, staring out across the fields that had once been his sanctuary, that he knew he'd pushed too hard, that he'd gone to Bear because Bear was vulnerable, confused, fragile, desperate to help. Cain had seen it as an opportunity. Now he saw it for what it looked like. Desperation. Moira's face haunted him, pale behind prison glass, that he'd thought he was fighting for her. Instead, he might have just handed the police. Another reason to doubt her. Bear's slipped the memory replayed in Cain's mind. Bear sitting in the pub, nursing a half-drunk pint. His big frame seemed smaller these days, his confidence worn thin by the scrutiny surrounding the modern slavery scandal and Ray Walters' death. You know she had nothing to do with it, Cain had insisted, leaning across the table. You saw what was going on at Celia's farm. Bear had nodded slowly. Moira wouldn't hurt a fly. Then tell them that, Cain had pressed. Tell them straight. And Bear had, but he'd also told them why. That Cain had asked him to. That Cain had urged him to make it clear that in the harsh light of an interrogation room. That encouragement looked like coercion. Prison walls. Moira sat opposite Cain in the visiting room, hands folded tightly in her lap. The fluorescent lights made her look even more drained than usual. Well, she asked quietly. Cain couldn't meet her eyes. Bear's confession didn't help. Her shoulders sagged. And the police? He hesitated. They've warned me off. A flicker of alarm crossed her face. What did you do? I told Bear to tell the truth. And they think that's intimidation? They think I'm interfering. Moira closed her eyes briefly. Cain, I was trying to help. And now, she pressed. His silence answered her. She leaned forward. You can't bulldoze your way through this. Not this time. The words stung, because deep down, he knew she was right. The modern slavery scandal. The shadow of Celia's farm loomed large over the village. The discovery of enslaved workers and the bodies hidden in shallow graves had shaken everyone. Ray Walter's name still sent a chill through conversations in the Woolpack. Moira's connection to the land had been enough for suspicion to take root. And suspicion, once planted, grew fast. Cain had believed Bear's recollections of Moira's horror when she first learned the truth would be the key to clearing her name. Instead, they'd muddied the waters. Mandy's return. A bright pink suitcase rolled across the cobbles as Cain Dingle swept back into the village like a whirlwind. "Miss me," she announced to no one in particular. Her time away in Ireland, and her stint on I'm a Celebrity, "Get me out of here," had given her stories for days. But the smiles faded quickly when she sensed the tension. Paddy looked exhausted. Dylan Penders barely spoke, and the police presence was unmistakable. "What on earth's happened?" Mandy demanded. When she heard about Bear's confession and Cain's involvement, her expression shifted from shock to fierce determination. "Well," she said firmly, "if Cain's made a mess of things, we'll just have to unmess them." Pressure mounts at the garage. The next morning, Cain finally showed up. Matty didn't waste time. "You've got a warning from the police." Cain's jaw tightened. "I know. They think you intimidated Bear." "I didn't. But it looks like you did." The words hit harder than Matty intended. Cain ran a hand over his face. For the first time, doubt crept in. Had he pushed Bear too far? Had he exploited his confusion? The optics, as Chun had put it, were terrible, and optics mattered. A quiet conversation later, Cain found Bear sitting alone outside the cafe. The older man looked lost. "I'm sorry," Bear said before Cain could speak. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Cain's anger evaporated instantly. "It's not your fault. They kept asking why I said what I said. I told them you'd asked me to." Bear's eyes were clouded with worry. "Did I mess it up?" Cain hesitated. "Yes," he admitted softly. Bear's face fell. But Cain forced himself to add, "And that's on me. Not you." For once, Cain Dingle wasn't looking for someone else to blame. The realization back at the farm, Cain stood alone in the kitchen. Moira's chair sat empty. The house felt colder without her. He'd thought pressure would crack the case open. Instead, it had cracked the fragile trust the police might have had. He'd handed them a narrative. The angry husband bullying a vulnerable witness. It was the worst possible look. For the first time, Cain understood that fighting this battle required patience. Something he'd never been good at. Mandy's plan. Mandy cornered him outside the Woolpack. "You can't keep charging in like a bull in a china shop," she told him bluntly. "I was helping." "You were panicking," she corrected. Her voice softened. "Moira needs strategy, not explosions." Cain bristled, but didn't argue, because she was right. The future. That night, Cain visited Moira again. "I won't meddle," he promised quietly. "Not anymore." She studied him carefully. "You mean it?" He nodded. "I'll trust the solicitor. I'll trust the process." It was the hardest thing he'd ever said. Moira reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "That's all I need." Uncertain days ahead. But as Cain left the prison, DC Chen watched from a distance. And her expression suggested the warning wasn't just procedural. It was personal. One more misstep. And Cain wouldn't just be complicating Moira's case, he'd be facing consequences of his own. Back in the village, whispers continued. Would Bear's confession resurface in a new light? Could fresh evidence emerge from Celia's farm? And could Mandy's fierce loyalty help untangle the web tightening around them all? For now, one thing was painfully clear. Cain Dingle had realized he'd made a mistake. The question was whether he'd realized it soon enough. Because in Emmerdale, actions always have consequences. And this time, the stakes weren't just pride, they were freedom.